Hey guys, welcome to Big Loz Official. Strongman has had loads of weird and wonderful events over the years, and today I'm going to take a look at 10 of the craziest. The first event we're going to look at is going all the way back to 1989's World's Strongest Man, and it's the cart carry. Right, so although carrying events, Conan circles, Basque circles, shield carries, they're a common event in Strongman these days. Looking back at this original, if you like, carrying event, it just, although it's not the weirdest event you'll see on the list, it just looks a bit bizarre. You've got these big strong men doing this sort of weird sideways crab walk. The whole setup, you've got some guy just sat in the middle trying to pivot, act as a pivot point just to stop the cart from moving around. And it's just a bizarre event. It's funny to watch, and I just wanted to include it into my list. The next event is the sword and chalice front hold from the pure strength team competitions. So I think it's quite obvious why this one's a little bit weird. I mean, it's not unusual to have a front hold type of event in a contest. This is putting a different spin on it. You've got the two heavy swords that the athletes are holding. There's this chalice of wine that's kind of like bubbling up. And eventually you get Bill Kazmar just kind of throwing it up, trying to catch it and help himself to a cheap drink. And in the same vein, a very similar event, in the 1989 Britain's Strongest Man, you had a front hold with a sword, and the referee was Jeff Capes. And the athlete is pointing the sword right at Jeff's throat. And if it comes down, then he loses his go. But it's just the intimidation of having Jeff Capes staring down that blade, the athlete looking directly at him. I mean, Jeff's life was on the line here. You see here, he's got Jamie Reeves. Jamie and Jeff didn't get along that well back then. And he's got this like 6-foot sword pointed directly at his throat. Very interesting event, and a lot of trust from the referee. Could you imagine Thor holding this sword towards Colin Bryce's throat? Next on the list, again from Pure Strength 1989, we have the bow and axe event. So we've got another weird event here from Pure Strength. I actually used to love watching these events. The Pure Strength competitions were just brilliant. Now you've got the athletes working as teams. So one athlete has to hold this bow. The bow has been tightened, so the tension is 10 times harder than a normal bow and arrow. And they're holding it for as long as they can. Eventually, they give way, they release the arrow, and then the next man has to hold an axe one-handed out in front as possible, for as long as possible, while all at the same time they're back to back with each other, acting as that wall, if you like, that support system. But it's just hilarious watching these athletes. You know, could you imagine the likes of Brian Shaw holding out a bow and arrow for as long as possible, and then passing on to a front hold with maybe Thor Bjornsson? It would be hilarious. And you just see that with Bill Kazmaier here. You've got some of the strongest guys at the time just doing these really random, weird events. Next up, we have the infamous 200-meter brick sprint from the 1990 World's Strongest Man. So if you guys think Strongman is about cardio these days, you are totally mistaken, and you've never seen the World's Strongest Man from 1990. This was an awesome competition right up until the last event. O.D. Wilson was looking absolutely incredible. He was winning power event after power event, moving well, with carrying anvils, heavy objects, and then finally, 5.5 points into the lead, last event, they decided they were going to do 100 kilos of bricks on your back and run round a 200-meter track as fast as possible. OD slipped. Jean-Paul, the fitter, faster man, came in for the win, winning his 4th World's Strongest Man title. But if I'm totally honest, if you go back and watch this, OD deserved this one. But it came down to an event that was all about speed and fitness. Next up, from 1979's Britain's Strongest Man, is the phone book tear. So as much fun as tearing a phone book is, I'm not really sure it's a strongman event in terms of a competition event. It's definitely a bit of a fun exhibition lift, but they actually had this as part of the contest back in 1979, and I think they had to tear through as many phone books as possible in a set time. Certainly interesting and fun to watch, but as I just demonstrated, not the hardest event in the world. Next event from the 1995 World's Strongest Man heats, the Murder Ball. So I think in 95, the World's Strongest Man was going proper gladiators on the athletes. There was a number of man against man events, and the Murder Ball was probably the weirdest of the lot. It's basically a giant beach ball full of water. The athletes are in a ring, and you have to push the ball out of your opponent's half. Proper gladiator style event. Never been seen before, has never been seen since at World's Strongest Man. The next event, back to Britain's Strongest Man, 1979, we have the Fairground Hammer Swing. Now, I don't know what I can really say about this event. in a proper strongman event, we've all seen these type of things in a fairground. I've had a go on these myself a number of times, and the kids are shouting at you to see what you can do. But to see this as part of a strongman show is quite hilarious. You see the guys going for these big swings, just shaking their head, not understanding why this bell won't ring at the top. It's a hilarious event to see as part of a competition, and I'm glad that we've never seen it at a strongman competition again since. So we're back to the pure strength contests, and this time for the log cut. So another real calamity of event here. It's actually a 500-pound log, which is pretty heavy, but it's part of a two-man team event. The guys had to sort of duck walk the log up to the platform. Then they have to work as a team to lift it into position. Then the two athletes take an axe each and start going at this log. The idea that they have to chop it in half. Now, the British team actually start off pretty well. You've got Mark Higgins here and Jamie Reeves looking like the two slightly fitter athletes, whereas Bill Kazmaier and Odie Wilson take a little bit longer to get this log in position. But the British guys then look like a proper cartoon with the two of them swinging away with the axes, making little cuts into the log. The Americans then catch up with some big, strong chopping from the big two powerful men, and then taking advantage of his body weight, Odie Wilson decides to jump on the log, crashes through it, and Bill then managed to drag and finish off. Whereas the British two look over and see what's going on. They decide they're going to try and do the same tactic. So Mark jumps onto the log. It doesn't go anywhere to start with. They attack it again a bit more, and then eventually they're both on top. Mark goes crashing through. This log comes down. It looks like he punctures a lung or something. You've got Odie Wilson kind of pulling the log along as if it's his pet dog to finish off. It's just a right state of an event. Again, another one I think the modern athletes are glad they don't have to do. But still awesome to look back and see these guys doing these crazy events. Number 2 on our list is the Hurricane. Back from the Manfred Classic back in 1995. So what do we say about this event? There's a wind turbine blasting out wind speeds of 135 kilometers an hour. The athletes are on a 15-meter track. They've got to walk as far as they can, holding a 50-kilo plexiglass frame, and get as close to these winds as possible. This event is absolutely bonkers. Ted Van der Paar manages to cope with this event better than most, but honestly, again, just one of those events. Who came up with this event? They each have an American football helmet on to protect them. It's quite shocking to really go back and watch these, but they are hilarious. If you haven't seen them, make sure you check them out. The craziest event on our list is the Medley Race from the 1986 Hercules Cup. So I want to point out that this event was from a legitimate strongman contest, and actually some of the best strongmen at the time, including Riku Kiri and Ilkka Niemistä, were taking part. Now, it's a bizarre event. The athlete starts at the starting point, he's told to go, runs along, gets himself into a sandbag. Yes, exact same sandbags you see at school kids races at summertime. Then they're on to the old-fashioned rope climb that you would have done, if you're old enough back at school again. Climb up the rope, get yourself down. The final part is then onto the bench press. Now, it doesn't look like it's any more than 100 kilos. The athletes have to bang out 10 reps, get themselves up, and then sprint to the line. 3 of the weirdest things I've seen put together in a strongman contest. Nothing that involved a huge amount of strength when you think of what these guys are capable of, but an absolutely hilarious event to watch. Again, one of those I'm glad they only ever did it once and it never saw its face in another strongman contest again. Right guys, that's our list. I really hope you've enjoyed the video and a look back at some of these weird and wonderful events we've seen in strongman over the years. If I'm totally honest, watching back through some of the old videos, there is so many that you could have I could have chosen from. Go and watch these yourself. Let me know which are your favourite weird events from the past, and we'll be back with more strength action soon. While you're here guys, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my awesome strength content.